Hey, Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl, and this is going to be my reaction to that terrible, terrible loss against the Cowboys on a Sunday night at home. The game you're favored by a touchdown to win against a team that's reeling, and they just came out and laid an absolute egg. And I've decided I really need to sort of take a different look on things in my life when stuff like this happens. I had a personal experience where something was a major inconvenience to me, where the wheelchair lift in my van broke, and I wrote a thing on Facebook of things I was thankful for to sort of help put it in perspective. So what I decided to do in this video is I'm going to make a list of things that I'm thankful for the Eagles. So number one, the thing I'm most thankful for the Eagles is I'm thankful that we have a defensive coordinator who continues to call terrible defensive calls, who decides we don't need to worry about getting pressure on quarterbacks. And when he does decide to blitz, he doesn't have to worry about putting his cornerbacks up in press coverage to prevent the wide receivers from getting free releases off the line. That's something I think we can really be thankful for, because that game wouldn't have happened last night had he not been there doing those things. The other thing I'm thankful for is a head coach who still decides he needs to take the unnecessary risk when you're playing a team that's struggling offensively and they are up 3-0 and you're in field goal range and you have a chip shot field goal and you decide not to go for it because you know what, let's go ahead and get stopped and give the other team momentum. That's a great thing, and I think we need to be thankful for that. And I'm also thankful that he continues to challenge plays that end up gaining us 2 yards and have no difference as to whether or not things are first downs or not. I think that's a great idea too, and I think he should continue to do that because that's obviously working out great. And then, I'm also thankful that we have a head coach and coaching staff in general that decides that when you've got a team coming into your house that's desperate and they need a win, let's not worry about getting the team really up in their intensity level to match that sort of desperation that you know your division opponent's going to come in with. Because once again, if our head coach doesn't do that and he doesn't have our team not worry about its intensity level, then we wouldn't have been able to watch that game last night. And I think, that's a shame if that wouldn't have happened, and we need to be thankful for that. And then finally, I'm also thankful we have a starting quarterback who goes ahead, throws a terrible interception at the beginning of the game, and right off the bat gives their team a glimmer of hope because you know what? Ultimately, what turnovers really matter. They don't really affect the outcome of the game. So let's just go ahead and give the other team 3 points right off the bat. Now, obviously, if you couldn't tell, that was obviously very sarcastic. The Facebook post I did, I was honest about, and I really did try to look at the bright side of things as I was in that situation. But this obviously is sarcasm because this Eagles team does not deserve any thanks for what they've done this season. They deserve a ton of thanks for everything they did for us last year, but what this team is doing this year is just absolutely unforgivable in terms of just how they're playing. And it's really been frustrating to watch this season. I've looked at my predictions that I've done this year. I am 3-6 on predictions. I did a W and L at the beginning of the season, and I changed some of them as I was actually going through the season. So, it actually didn't match up quite right. And right now, if you look at my W's and L's at the beginning of the season that I had, I am 1-8 on W's and L's that I did at the beginning of the season. The only one I got right was the Colts game. The rest of them, when I had done W's and L's about a week or so before the season started, that's where I was. I ended up being, I would be 1-8 on those predictions right now if I had stuck with those. So all in all, you just, absolutely terrible the way this season has gone. Feels like a wasted season. Now that Darby is out for the year, I really think we're going to struggle on defense now to stop teams. Drew Brees is probably going to throw for 600 yards against us next week. And the only way we're going to win that game is in a shootout, which, given their defense, isn't out of the realm of possibility. But I have no confidence in our defense making any stops on their team right now. And I think that's problematic going forward. And right now, a lot of that blame, I think, has got to go on the coaching staff. And specifically Jim Schwartz. I said it after the Panthers game. that I think he needs to be fired. After the Titans game, I was already starting to really get down on him. But this game last night just once again reiterates the problems that we have, where we really need to come up with a major stop. The defense just does not seem to be coming through this year. That said, we can take a quick look at some studs and duds from this game. I've got 2 studs and 2 duds that I'll look at in this game. In terms of studs, before the fourth quarter, I would have considered listing a couple guys on the defensive line on this. But you really can't list those guys when you needed to make major stops and they were just running the ball all over us. I know Darby goes down. I know Sidney Jones and Jalen Mills were out. And if we had ended up losing that game in the fourth quarter because Dak Prescott ended up throwing for, 150 yards in the fourth quarter and 2 touchdown passes, and that would have been what lost us the game, I would have been okay with that, given the fact that sometimes just the injury bug gets you. But that's not how they beat us. They beat us by running the ball just right up the gut on us. And that's supposed to be our strength, and we just looked terrible, and the defensive line was getting pushed around far too much in the fourth quarter. So as a result, I can't give any studs to guys on the defensive line. The 2 studs I will award out, my number 2 stud is going to be Jake Elliott. He kicks the long field goal and really comes through. And he was a little shaky early in the season, but he seemed to finally get into his rhythm, and he seems to be back on track and producing again. So Jake Elliott ends up being a stud. And the other guy that's going to be the stud of the game, and had we won, we'd all be singing his praises today because of just how great of a game he had, and that was Zach Ertz. Ertz puts up insane numbers again. And I talked in the bye week about some of the stats that he could potentially break, and he just continues that trend again. And I know most people don't care when other people talk about their fantasy teams, but I was behind 65 points going into the Sunday night game, and I needed big nights I have 3 Eagles. I have Ertz, Wentz, and Jake Elliott, and I needed big nights out of a combination of those 3 guys, and Zach Ertz himself got me 40 points. So he alone is the one that ended up letting me win my fantasy matchup just because of the insane numbers he was able to put up in that game. So Zach Ertz just absolutely, I think, has established himself in my mind as the premier tight end in the NFL right now. And, as a result, he's my number 1 stud of the game. For duds, it's all going to come down to the coaching. So, you can put these in either order. Frankly, I'm a little more, like I said, from other videos and just what I said earlier in this video, the guy I'm more upset with is Jim Schwartz. So I'll put Jim Schwartz as the number 1 dud and Doug Peterson as the number 2. But, those guys just, like I said, for the reasons in my sarcastic comments about being thankful, all those things, just wrap them all up. That's why they're the duds of this game. Wentz avoids the dud list. I think about putting him on here because there's only 1 turnover in the game, and it's his fault. As I talked about going into this game, there was really 2 things that I thought we could end up losing this game as a result of. Number 1 is turnovers, and number 2 is they're just desperate and we don't match their intensity. Both those things happened. We lost the turnover battle, and they clearly were playing as a desperate team, were more intense, and we just did not match their level of intensity. But Wentz is the one reason why we lose the turnover battle, so I would think about putting him on the duds list, but ultimately he has a great second half, ends up, like I talked about, the record that he had the potential to break and set on his own. He does that, adding another game onto his streak of now 22 straight games with at least 1 touchdown and 1 or fewer interceptions, setting the NFL record for that streak now. And he continues to add to his streak for the franchise record of consecutive games with a touchdown pass, and he can match his own record of 7 straight games with 2 or more touchdown passes if he throws 2 touchdown passes against the Saints, which against their defense is very possible. So because of that, I'm going to keep Wentz off the duds list. But he comes up really small early in the game, and ultimately, I would have preferred him make a little bit better decisions late in the game as well, especially that last play where you're throwing it short of the end zone. I don't know why you're doing that. let your guys get in the end zone and try and make a throw in the end zone, because even if it's incomplete, they had enough time, I think, to try and run another play. You basically limited yourself to only that one. That was the only play you were going to have, and if they were going to get your guy beforehand, and the way Dallas was tackling last night, I don't think that should have been a pass that was attempted. So for those reasons, Wentz doesn't end up on the studs list, even though he had a good game stat-wise. But for all the other all the reasons I mentioned in terms of some of the mistakes he made, is why he doesn't end up on the studs list. So, like I said, he was sort of a mixed bag last night, and I'm just going to sort of leave him in that could have been in either list category, honestly. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think below. Are there any studs and duds I missed on this? I tried to completely unplug from the game afterwards. Haven't read anything about it really in terms of a breakdown, because I was just so frustrated with it afterwards. Usually I'll sort of go through, my thoughts on it and read some other commentators that I like to see really reinforce what I already think about a game. But ultimately, I haven't even done that in this game because I've just been so frustrated. Glad I'm away right now at a conference and haven't had a time to really listen to any sports talk, because after that game, I just wanted to completely ignore the team right now, because they're just so frustrating, and really it's making it hard to root for them this year, just because of the way they're playing, and based on what we know about what they did last year, we know they've got the talent to do better than what they're doing, and that's what's frustrating about this particular team. So like I said, leave your comments below. Let me know if you think I missed any one of the studs and duds list. I'll check in before the Saints game and give you my prediction. Right now I don't see how they win that game, but then again, the way the NFL goes, who knows? Maybe they're the desperate team that goes into another team's building and shocks the world. So it's entirely possible that could happen as well. Like I said, I'll check in before that game and let you know what I think and give you my prediction. Until then, fly Eagles fly.